Okay, hello everyone. I'm really excited today because I'm hanging out with my friend Tanya Thomas, she's an actress, she is a voice actress, and she has created an award-winning solo show called Naturally Tan, which it won all the things at Hollywood Fringe, and it's been in the LA Women's Theater Festival, and she just told me she's getting ready to perform it in Ventura County, and it won awards at the Whitefire. Did I miss anything?
No, I think you got it.
I think I got it. Okay, awesome. Yeah. So it's a really, really great show. And I'm going to talk to her about today. But first, Tanya, I want to start with how did you get started acting in the first place?
Wow. I think I've always been drawn to it. And, I grew up in Singapore. So acting wasn't something you aspire to do or want to be because there really are no opportunities per se. We had 4 channels, like an English channel, a Malay channel, Mandarin channel, and Tamil channel, which was the Indian dialect. So, your opportunities in English TV are, small. So yeah, it was never something that I knew could work out. But then, I came here when I was 11 for a 3-month holiday, stayed with my aunt. And that's when all this started brewing, right? I knew that I was going to be part of it and I just didn't know how. But I knew it was deep in my bones. It's I knew it's going to work out somehow, but I'm still working at it, which is, I'm still working at it. Yeah.
Well, we all are. I think in any career, right?
Yeah, you're right.
It's always a work in progress. So you're 11, you come to the US, you're like, oh my God, I could do this. I could go into acting. And then I was looking at your bio and you started doing radio in Singapore, right?
Yes.
So how did that come about?
So in Singapore, one of the things I would do was incessantly listen to the radio. I used to listen to Rig D's Casey Kasem, because on Sundays they would buy those shows and play it on the radio. And so I was obsessed with it. I used to pretend to be them. In school, everyone knew that I could do voices. And so I would do prank calls for my friends. We would pick up the phone and prank call someone else, pretend to be someone. And we would just have fun doing stuff like that. I would even do radio dedications, tape it for someone. They would send it to their crush, all those kinds of things. So I knew I was going to do something with my voice. And then, of course, radio was the dream in Singapore because that was a job that was possible. At least I thought. And then I got into this competition called The Next Big Thing. So the winner of The Next Big Thing would host a TV show, would be on the radio, would get a radio show, and I think be a writer in one of the entertainment magazines in Singapore. So I was the top, I think the top 7 or the top 5, I can't remember. And I was the runner-up. So I didn't win. But as we were going through the competition, I had to be on the radio to do an interview and stuff like that. So the program director loved my voice and loved me being on the show. And so she brought me on as a part-time radio DJ. So anytime anyone was sick or had to be on leave, I would fill in. So I did that while I was going to school. And then I was a transfer to Cal State Long Beach. So I moved here as a transfer. And then I couldn't work outside of campus because I was a foreign student. But I was I don't want to do campus radio because it doesn't pay anything. But it just so happened on Cal State Long Beach campus, there was KJazz 88.1 FM. So I took my top 40 demo. This is a jazz station, public radio. I take this top 40 demo and I drop it off at their doorstep and, say I really want to be part of the radio show. Oh, well, I also forget, I was intern. So while I was in school in Singapore, I got an internship in Hawaii at their campus radio. So when I was there, I interned with the jazz person there. So that's how I got exposed to jazz. So, that was part of my package when I pitched it to the jazz station here, saying, I've had experience with jazz, but here's my top 40 demo, you know what I can do type thing. And they called me up and they were like, well, do you want to do the overnight show on Saturday nights? And here I am, I'm 20. I'm like, yeah, of course, give it to me. So, right after moving here, I got the overnight jazz DJ slot on Saturday nights. And I did that for 2 years till the station got bought up. Yeah. And then, it's such a cool story. I had swapped a night. So like I couldn't do Saturday night. So I swapped with my friend on Friday. So I did the Friday night show. Someone from Apple's marketing department, the head of marketing, was in LA at 3 a.m. in the morning driving. And, he's a big jazz fan. And he heard me play Jim Hall at 3 a.m. in the morning, one of his favorite songs. And he gets in touch with me. And that's how I started doing podcasts for Apple. This was like one of the first podcasts that Apple did. And we were experimenting basically. So yeah, I ended up doing 3 podcasts for them. And yeah, it was just so cool. So that's how like this whole acting thing, got sidetracked a little bit. It became a voiceover career because I was, booking little voiceover jobs here and there while I was doing radio. And yeah.
Wow, so, yeah. That's really cool. And it's interesting too, when you said earlier, you were like, oh, like I'm still trying to make it. But that thing you just said about doing podcasts for Apple, like doing some of the first podcasts for Apple, that's huge.
Yeah. In fact, I think it was the first podcast for Apple.
Dude.
Back in the day. Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. It was a good few years.
Wow. Yeah.
So
at what point did you say, okay, I think I want to do a solo show?
Oof. That was so many things coming together. It was so many things. When I was in an acting class, this was 10 years ago, all the things that I talk about in my show come out in certain ways, right? Like, if someone approaches me and wants to hug me, I'm like, I don't really hug tight. I make sure my, chest is really far back, like, because I was uncomfortable in my skin. And my acting teacher kind of noticed it. And, when I was telling him about how I grew up and what what is in my brain half the time. And he was like, you know what, you should write about your experiences, like talk about your cross-cultural experiences and maybe put it on the Moth or something. So I tried writing. I wrote a page, hated every second of writing it because this is pre-kids, like I'm in the thick of it. Like, I'm really not comfortable in my body. And remember, I was in radio at the time too. So it's like, I was able to not show my face. There was no Instagram, there was nothing, right? So I didn't have to put myself out there that way at all. So I wrote a page and then said it in class the next week as a monologue. And everybody's face had this like pity look, like, oh my God, like, poor you have boobs at 8, like it was so mortifying, because I also couldn't explain so many things about Singapore and like why it is the way it is, like colorism. Like I couldn't explain any of that in this one pager. And also I hadn't really like thought it through, right? All these like identity and color. And I hadn't really thought through it at that time, 10 years ago, So anyway, I wrote that page and he encouraged me to write more. He was like, I think you write beautifully. You should continue to write. I was like, oh, hell no. I did not like the reaction I got because I didn't want pity because I was like, this is so trivial. It feels so trivial, but I couldn't understand why. Why is it so trivial? Like, I was like, people are dying and I'm talking about not being comfortable in my body. So there was just a lot of shame around it, And then anyway, kids happen. Both my kids had curly hair when they were little, like super tight curls. And here I am like straightening my hair every day because that's something I talk about in my show too, about the beauty standards and me wanting to be like everybody else, like my classmates, and like straight, like even a little curl, I would freak out and straighten it out. Like, because I had this thinking that my hair was so huge because I was told that, all the time. Like you've got troll hair, you've got like, it's so big. It's so, it's humid in Singapore. So guaranteed it's not like this. It's like, it's, it's frizzy. It's, but anyway, because of all these like messages I got as a kid, it was just within me, not realizing that it was within me. You know what I mean? But I just operated through the world that way. So anyway, they had really curly hair. And this is when I start thinking about like, wait, what am I showing my kids? Right? That here I am straightening my hair, and here I am telling them you've got beautiful hair, and all their classmates have straight hair. And so they want to kind of be like that. And they see me straightening my hair. I'm like, what message am I sending my kids? Like, I don't want my kids to go through what I went through. So yeah, that's when change started happening, right? And so around this time, my kids were getting a little bit more independent. And somehow I stumbled across Jessica's class, our director, Jessica Lynn Johnson, and her free Saturday class in Sherman Oaks at the Whitefire. So one day I told my husband, I was like, you know what, you've got the kids on Saturday. I'm going to do this on Saturday mornings for myself. And, you know, Josh, my husband's very supportive, and he's like, yeah, go ahead. I've got the kids. So I started doing that almost every week, but I would never go up and do my monologue or whatever that I've written down, because Jessica would do like a little meditation, and you know, people were clamoring to go up there, right?
Oh, I went once, and it was crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, you had to be like on your toes to get up if you wanted to say what you wrote. And, you know, for me, it was like, maybe I would go up if no one, you know, if people, everybody's had their turn, and then now it's my turn, I would do it. But it was never like that, right? It was like the first 5 people that got up got to speak. So I was never in any rush to say my work, right? And then the pandemic happened, and I started meeting with Jessica weekly. And I think that was such a gift, because while I was homeschooling the kids, I was forced to come up with something to show her every week, right? Even like, I remember some days it would be like an hour before class. I'm like, oh gosh, I have nothing to show her. So I would lock myself in my bedroom and just like write even a paragraph. But slowly, you know, it became a show. And yeah, I would attribute it to that the weekly meetings, because otherwise it would have been crazy. And I mean, still that, you know, even though there was like an arc now in the story, right? Now that I've had the kids and I've examined my life and, you know, thought about all these nuances in my life that I've never really thought about before, there was still so much shame around it, because, you know, I felt no one talks about it. And, you know, I felt, why would anyone want to watch this? And then I did the reading, and that's when everything changed, because then it became, wow, like, you know, this could help someone. Because all that feedback I was getting, you know, everyone was like, every young girl should watch this. Like, you could help somebody. And I never thought of it that way. It was more like, oh, it's so shameful. Like, why am I talking? Ugh, yuck, you know, it's so gross. But yeah, everyone thought it was a beautiful story, and that everybody goes through it in some form. We just don't talk about it, and it's not as intense or whatever. And then also having that cultural background to, you know, make it full, it just became something where I was like, you know what, this is actually giving voice to people who hide themselves like I used to. And, you know, it might show up for someone who doesn't see themselves anywhere, you know? So I was like, this is cool. This could be something that could help someone. And it's not just me anymore. So now, you know, it took away that shame, and it's more of helping people, helping other women. And yeah.
And
so it's been a cool journey.
It's really interesting to me to hear you talk about, like, you know, starting out and feeling so embarrassed and you know, being so worried that people were going to judge, people were going to connect with it, like, oh, you know, who's really going to care? And like, now your show has won all these awards and gotten all this recognition. So I just think that's really inspiring for a lot of us who do solo theater, because I'll tell you, like, there have been a million times where I've been like, oh my God, this is so narcissistic. Why am I doing this? And I wasn't even aware. Apparently there's like a bit of a stigma about solo shows. I was like, oh, well, I didn't realize that. But like, as you just said, I mean, every solo show I've seen, even the ones that I don't like as much, there's always something where I'm like, wow, like this is so moving. This is so incredible that, you know, so I'm really glad to hear that. Like, I guess I feel relieved to hear that you also struggled with that.
Right. I mean, solo shows are so empowering. I mean, I saw 35 shows at the Hollywood Fringe, and I think 30 of them were solo shows. And I felt I grew as a person with every show. I mean, even with your show, Yes, No, Maybe So. I mean, the concept of, saying yes, no, or maybe so, like, I mean, every human being goes through that, right? And you, by telling your specific story, I feel like it illuminates like this universal thread that everyone goes through, and you don't realize it because, you're like, oh, this is my little story. Like, why does it matter? When really it does, and we should keep telling stories, our unique stories, right?
That's what people do. I'm reading this book right now that was by the drummer from the Grateful Dead, and he was talking about how some of the earliest professions were like musician and storyteller. And I found that so validating, because I look at myself and I go, why did you want to do this profession that everyone wants to do and it makes no money and you're such a shitty freeloader? And then I'm like, no, actually, like, I'm a human being. Like,
yeah. I mean, storytelling is like beginning of time, right? Like, everyone told stories. They were the people that continued life, right? Like, we're the thread throughout humanity. It's a amazing job.
I agree. It's nice work when you can get it, for sure.
Yes.
Which leads me back to, so it sounds like the writing of your solo show, like starting from the time you were in that acting class, like all the way through the pandemic, it sounds like it was kind of a multi-year thing. Is that correct?
Yeah. So I want to say I wrote that first page that I wrote was 2 years before my first kid was born. So now she's 9. So I want to say, so it had to be 11 years ago.
Wow. Wow.
And I actually recently found that paper because, I remember chucking it in between something and going, I never want to see that crap again. And I somehow found it sometime last year. And I mean, I was like, wow, I felt so like I wanted to hug this person, because I've grown so much from who that Tanya was. And I'm like, wow, like she was so stuck, like she couldn't grow, and oh my God, I attribute everything to my girls, because I saw myself reflected in my girls. And I did not want any of, these neurotic things that I believed and blah, blah, blah. I didn't want my kids to experience it. And, like the color of your skin. So my husband's white, and, my kids are mixed, right? And we live in Thousand Oaks, mostly white. And so my kids, when they were in kindergarten, it was mostly white kids, few Hispanics, but, they were one of the few Indian kids. And I remember my eldest daughter, when we were going to buy a doll, like she wanted some type of doll, and it came in different shades because it was like the American Girl, Bitty Baby, and it had different shades. And so, obviously I see the shade that I am, and I get excited about it because I'm like, I never had this growing up. Like I had Barbie dolls and they were all white. And so again, I think that's beauty, right? The blonde hair and the fair skin. My older daughter, who was, I want to say 6 at the time, she points to the fair doll and says, that's that's more like me. But my younger one, who's actually fairer, who's my husband's color almost, picked the darker doll that looked like me, because she's so young, she's like 3 or 4. She sees herself in me, right? Because that's who she sees. She's like, oh, I'm like mommy. Whereas my older kids, who's already now in kindergarten and, mixing with her friends, and she's realizing like, hey, how come my hair doesn't fall that way. And, you know, I was like, and that really opened my eyes. I'm like, wow, like I need to love myself wholeheartedly for these kids to love themselves wholeheartedly. There's no other way about it, you know, because we're all unique and we got to love ourselves. That's the biggest love story of all time, loving yourself, you know? Yeah.
So would you say the solo show helped with that?
Yeah, writing it out too. I mean, fleshing out everything that I had in my brain, but it was all jumbled, like having it fleshed out. Yeah, it was so therapeutic and it was so healing, I want to say.
And have your kids seen it?
No, they've seen, so because, you know, they're still 9 and 7. Maybe when they're 12, 13, I'll let them watch it. They've seen snippets of Tanvi, you know, when she comes in and, you know, because when everything was virtual, right? And I've had friends watch the show and stuff. So they saw a few things, but not entirely. Yeah, but one day they will, I guess.
No, I think that's awesome. That reminds me of like Ali Wong, like people asked her, like, are you gonna let your kids watch your stand-up? And she's like, yeah, I think like 13 is a good age. So
yeah, right. Yeah, I think 13 is the perfect age, really.
So there you go.
Yeah.
So your show's got a lot of tech in it. There's, you know, there's sound, there's multimedia, there's video, there's like animation. I mean, it's incredible. Talk about like, how did you decide to incorporate that? How did that impact your creative process? You know, anything you want to say about that?
I mean, when I first wrote the show, I envisioned it pretty bare bones, you know, like I wanted my acting to shine through, right? Like you're just watching me, like, you know, you're so enveloped in the story that you're watching this one actor, which I've seen in solo shows, right? Like you're just like, wow, you're just enraptured. But then because of the pandemic, you know, we started seeing shows that had multimedia and it sounded interesting. Because like when you're at home watching a solo show, it's so easy to get up and go. So easy. Like I have to make sure I have 1 hour blocked away where I don't have my kids running in and out when I want to enjoy a solo show, because it's so easy to go, I'll come back to that later. But with multimedia in, you know, virtual shows, I think that was great. And so because I was debuting the show in a pandemic where I didn't have an audience, and you and I did the same thing, right? We debuted it. Yeah, at Whitefire, right?
Yep, at Whitefire.
Yeah. And we had nobody in the audience. So, you know, I'm thankful we had the multimedia in the back to support the story, you know, and yeah, so once I determined we're gonna do a multimedia show, you know, make it like, then I wanted every scene to be something in the back, you know? So yeah, it was cool. It took a long time, I want to say. Like I wanted the perfect picture, I wanted the perfect video. And that's one thing my parents got on. So there's a driving scene in my show where I'm in the car with my parents. And so I asked my parents, because I needed Singapore footage. I'm like, where am I going to get Singapore footage from? So they literally took a drive with the camera facing the back. So it looks like I'm in a car. And
oh my
that's
God.
Yeah. So that's my parents' video from Singapore.
Wow, wait, pause. Because I had just assumed that you like found some stock footage. So your parents actually drove around with the camera to give you that footage for your show.
Yes.
Oh
in fact, it was so fast, I had to slow down the video so you wouldn't get like car sick, you know, like slow it down so you could actually see things. But yeah, that was them helping me out. And that when I debuted the show, they had no idea what the show was about. Like they were freaking out a little bit. They were like, solo show? Like, what are you going to talk about? And, you know, they knew, you know, snippets of what I went through, you know, but they had no idea. So they were freaking out. Right. But yeah, so they were nice enough to do that for me. And then the rest of it, I got, you know, I paid for the rest of it. And then I even found, so there's a scene, I do a wrestling scene.
Yep.
It's called Battle of the Breasts, right? So I take two characters that from my childhood, right, that also steered my view of certain things. And I was like, how do I do this? At first I was going to embody the characters, and then it became more fun when I was like, you know what, I'm going to play the stage announcer and let everything else play around me. And that's when I found someone, you know, and asked her to do the drawings. And then I asked someone else to animate it. And so it just became this fun little thing. It was stressful because it was like 2 weeks before I was going to debut the show. But now that it's there, I love that scene, you know, because it's like all these things from my brain that just like, you know, got splattered on the screen. So that's kind of fun.
And it was so funny to see because I'll just brag to everybody that my former drum student, Tori Constantine, is the one who did that illustration. Yes. And it was funny because I was looking at it and I was like I knew she had done something for your show, but like I didn't know what. And as soon as I saw that scene, I was like, oh, I know Tori.
That was it. Like, yeah. Yeah, I wasn't going to say her name because I wasn't sure if I should say your student.
Oh, I think it's okay. I mean, Tori's an adult. I get maybe I'll text her and be like, "Is it okay that I talked about you?" I think she'll probably be fine with it.
Okay.
If not, she knows where I live. She can come kill me.
God, no. No, she was awesome. She, you know, took it stride because the stuff I was telling her to draw, you know, I'm sure she was like, "Good Lord, what is this lady asking me to draw?" You know. But and then I even told her at first it was just going to be no color. It was just going to be black and white. And then when we put it on the screen, I was like, oh crap, it needs color because otherwise you can't really tell when we're virtual. So I had to go back to her, like, can you color this in and make this brighter and blah, blah, blah. And she was so sweet. And she was so nice to work with. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, she's done show graphics for me and it was the same. I like asked her for a million things. I'm like, she did it.
Yeah, she's awesome.
That's super.
Yeah, cool. I'm thankful to you for that connection.
I guess it was through Jessica, but yeah, I guess.
Yeah, but Jessica knew about it through you.
There you go. All right. Connecting people. That's how we do. So actually, speaking of connecting people, so I'm also very grateful to your show because you introduced me to this comedian, Kumar.
Yes.
On whom Tanvi is based. So like, how did that character come to be and come to be the narrator?
Yeah. Okay. So I've been to Kumar's shows in Singapore, never knew him personally. But as I was writing the show, I had all these vignettes of like things that happened to me or whatever, and how I made it into scenes or whatever. I just didn't know how to connect them. And I also did not want to be the narrator where I go, when I was 8 and when I, you know, I just did not want to do that because there's so much information that you need in order to even understand the whole show. And, you know, I wanted it to be entertaining, you know, and I knew I could not do it on my own. So as I was writing the piece, Jessica asked this one question that, you know, made all this work. She was like, was there anyone in Singapore that has achieved what you want to achieve? And I was like, well, not really, no. But, you know, then I thought of Kumar and how, you know, everybody knew who he was, right? And he was doing what he loved. And he got to a point where he had to stumble over all these blocks and, you know, he did it, right? And he's where he is today because he had to go through all these blocks where like he couldn't talk about politics, race, and sex back in the day. But, you know, now he's able to because he is, you know, he has jumped all through those hurdles, right? So I was like, well, there's Kumar. And then I was like, oh my God, you know, like, what if I have a drag queen who is her highest self, just like how Kumar, you know, is his highest self when he's on stage and having the time of his life on stage, right? Like, what if I have this person? Then it also brings in my culture growing up, right? Then I can bring in this Singaporean character that is well loved, who I hope people will love, right? Versus the characters that you see in my show where always saying something mean or, demeaning or something, right? So like this is a Singaporean character that everybody loves. Yeah, so that's how Tanvi started forming. And then, I got a little worried. I'm like, can a woman be a drag queen? Like, am I going to get in trouble for being a drag queen? Like all these questions. So I started borrowing books, on being a drag queen. I looked at videos, I read interviews, and I think there was one interview, and I can't remember which drag queen it was, but it could, what, I think it's actually RuPaul. When he was doing interviews for Drag Race, he was talking about how, like Lady Gaga, she's in drag. When she's off stage, she's someone completely different. On stage, she's Lady Gaga, and she's a gay icon. She's a drag queen icon. Because she's in drag. And so what does that mean, really? It's your highest form. You are here able to be whatever you want. No one's judging you on anything because you're being your highest self. You're having fun, and you can take it or like it or not like it or whatever. But here I am presenting myself, and this is what I want you to see. Yeah, share, like all these people who are icons from being a higher self. And so what I liked also about this Tanvi character is Tanya in the show, right? The first half of the show, you see her like not being able to embody her femininity, which is, the body parts, and just being feminine, like, becoming a woman at an early age, right? And not being comfortable in it and not accepting it and like wishing it would go away. That's all I did when I was little. I was like, I just wish I had, like, it was gone. How do I make this disappear? Which is when I started doing weights and things like this, thinking that, my breasts will become muscle. Like all these insane things that I used to do, thinking I could get rid of them when really, and so it was me trying to not accept my femininity, right? And then as the show ends, you see that journey towards femininity. And so this Tanvi character is almost like a balance between femininity and masculinity, right? So, and that's what I love about Tanvi. And so like my character, so I have a character called Dysmorphina, right? And Dysmorphina at one point talks about like, get rid of your boobs and blah, 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 blah. And then towards the end of the show, I do this dance that's based on a Kerala classic dance style called Mohiniyattam. And I do it to a lullaby from Kerala. And Mohiniyattam is a very feminine dance style from Kerala. That when the British came, they tried to, stop all these dance forms back in the day because it was so, and there are a few people that know this dance. And I so happen to know someone in Camarillo that told me, oh yeah, there's actually a Mohiniyattam dance master that lives in Agora Hills, which is 20 minutes from me.
Whoa.
I'm like, you gotta be kidding. So I get in contact with her. Of course, it's a pandemic. I can't meet with her. I mean, this woman, Vijaya Lakshmi, has been dancing since she was 5. Her mom is a dance master. So she's been dancing since she was 5. And she was saying, you can't be a Mohiniyattam dancer in 3 months. It was just impossible. This is 20 years, 30 years in the making.
That's like in classical music. It's like the same kind of thing.
Right.
You start when you're really young.
Right. And so she was like, you'll never be a Mohiniyattam dancer, but you can take the essence of it, the essence of femininity, right? Also that balance of like, why is it bad for a woman to show all her emotions, and why is it bad for a man to show all his emotions, right? Like balance the two and celebrate your femininity and celebrate your movements. And so Tanya is really like a celebration of your highest form, it's celebration of movement and yeah, just being free, you know? And so she was like the perfect character to talk about this person who kind of hides herself and needs to get out of it. And so that was the whole background for Tanya in the show, to write to this character, Tanvi. And then it all kind of comes together in the end. So yeah.
You know, that's really interesting. And I especially like you talking about sort of grappling with, oh my God, is it okay for me to play a drag queen? Because I've always really been fascinated with drag. And in my first solo show, I do a little bit of a drag performance moment. And I've always wanted to go and like do it again and perform as a drag king, but I've been afraid to do that because number one, as far as I know, I'm straight. And number two, like I was online in some forum somewhere and there was a trans person who was saying like, why do people do drag? It's so harmful. And I was just like, oh my God, I don't want to get in trouble. So like, I'm not even going to touch that, you know? But then like in your show, like I love Tanvi so much. I've said like, I want to be the president of Tanvi's fan club, you know? And the way you described RuPaul's statement about like Sharon, about Lady Gaga, and that like, you know, it's like their highest self, you know, that's I think is really cool.
Yeah. And so, you know, after doing all that research, I felt good about having Tanvi in my show. Yeah, there are some people who come to my show. I remember during the Hollywood Fringe, because, you know, you stumble upon shows that you know nothing about.
Right.
So like few people came to my show thinking it was a drag show.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So as they're watching, they're thinking, you know, I'm a male in drag. But then as the story unfolds, they're like, oh my God, wait, is she a woman? Is she a man? And then, you know, at the end, they're like, oh my God, I had no idea. And then after the show, they will come up and go like, oh my God, like you like completely fooled me almost, because at first I thought you were drag. And, you know, it's like, so I again explain that drag is really your highest form. And I explain that in the show at the end too, like, you know, drag is my highest form. And it's my way of showing my best self to the world. Because when you live in fear a lot, you know, it's like, I lost my train of thought. When you stay in a world of fear versus being your highest self, like what do you want? How do you want to show up in the world? Then you can work towards getting there, right? Versus worrying about what people think of you. It's like work towards how you want to show up in the world. And so that's where my idea of drag for Tanvi is. And I also did research on Kumar. Like, how did he get started in drag in Singapore, you know? And then I found out he actually had to perform to police officers in Singapore before putting his act on stage. So I was like, I mean, I have to put that in there because he has come so far. And then you have this Tanya character coming so far. So, you know, there were all these little threads. And yeah.
And he's so funny too, Kumar. Like I after I watched your show, like I went and like read all your notes, and then I like went and like watched a bunch of Kumar videos on YouTube. And it's like, I mean, some of the jokes I get, some of the jokes I obviously don't get, but even when you don't get it, like you still know it's funny, right?
Right. Yeah.
Definitely.
I mean, he's way cruder than Tanvi would ever be. And, you know, I've been to his shows where, you know, he's hardcore, but he makes fun of every race, you know, because when you're Singaporean, you've got, you know, all these different races and he's a minority. So he like jokes about Chinese people, he jokes about Malays, Indians, you know, and some of it wouldn't fly here, you know, but everybody knows Kumar in Singapore. So it's like an endearing thing when he makes fun of everything, you know? Right.
It's like an honor to be made fun of by Kumar.
Yeah. Yeah. And I remember when I took Josh to Singapore, we went to see Kumar, and of course Josh gets picked up on stage because he's this white guy in the audience, right? And Kumar is of course like fawning over Josh. And, he's like, who did you come with? And, he points to me and he's like, where'd you get him from? Oh, get her from Little India, is it? Like he was just making fun of me. And then,
wow.
And
yeah,
then,
you cannot do that here. No.
yeah. And then the line he used, I actually put in the show. He said, I hope you trip and fall when you walk out so I can snatch Josh, right? So yeah, I was like, I'm laughing because, he's being funny. It sounds rude as hell, but, I know where he's coming from. So I was like, I have to put that in the show, and that got in.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's just been fun being here and creating Tanvi.
Does Kumar know about your show?
No. So I have friends who know Kumar, and I've been considering actually, doing like a Zoom thing with him and telling him about the show and see what he thinks. But yeah, maybe one day I'll have the guts to do it. I don't know.
I really hope you get to. I hope that Kumar gets to experience Tanvi, because I just think Tanvi is so fabulous. And I mean, I really appreciated, like, Tanvi does a lot of explaining about Singapore and about the slang and about all the different things. And I love that, because I mean, I went in knowing zilch about Singapore, and like I came out going, wow, it's so cool. Now I want to know all the things and Google all the things. So like that's great when audiences don't know going in that they're going to be educated.
Well, it's so funny because as a Singaporean kid, we had all these American shows, right? So we had all this context for America, right? But then Americans have nothing for Singapore. And sadly enough, Crazy Rich Asians is the view of Singapore now. You know what I mean? Because there was nothing else before that. And it's a wrong representation of Singapore, right? Crazy Rich Asians to me. But yeah, we had every context for America, and you guys had nothing for us. So that's another reason why Tanvi was just perfect as that vehicle of like, telling you about Singapore and educating you about Singapore and also, making you like Singapore versus all these little vignettes I put in there, So yeah, it's been fun.
Right. And I think it provides important context too, because again, your story, I don't think there's anyone who can't connect with something in your story of growing up and feeling like they don't fit in. And it might not be exactly the same, but I think everyone can connect to sort of the universal story that you're telling. But then all of those specific details about specifically being Indian in Singapore, like, that's what really makes it special,
Yeah. It's been such an adventure. And I never knew something like this would be possible for me. I knew I wanted it. I've seen Whoopi Goldberg's show and growing up, but she seems so like she's a celebrity, like me as a kid from Singapore going like, it's, unattainable, right? None of that seemed attainable. And then when I moved here, so another reason I wanted to write a solo show was, I really want to find representation for my voiceover, for my acting, where they see me at work and go, I love this girl and I want to rep her and I believe in her and I'm going to push for her. I'm going to pick up phones for her. I want someone on my team like that. Mm-hmm. Because so far, for acting, I get sent for everything. It's like, because you can't really tell exactly what I am. Like I could pass off as a lot of different races. Mm-hmm. So I get sent for Black roles. I get sent for Pakistani roles. Mm-hmm. I get sent for anything, right? Like any Hispanic roles. And so I've had an agent tell me, I want you to learn Spanish. I want you to pick up any Indian language that I get send you for. And I remember there was one audition that I went on and it required me to speak Urdu. which
Oh my
is,
God.
the Pakistani language.
Mhm.
My sister-in-law is Pakistani. So I call her up and ask her, can you like translate this into Urdu? And I learned it in a day. And I know I did a fine job, because even she was like, okay, like, I am actually surprised you pulled that off.
Wait, pause though. I'm not,
Yeah.
because you nail all those accents in that show. And like, like hearing you, I would never guess that you were from Singapore unless you told me. You know what I mean? So I just want to say, I am not surprised you learned Singapore in a day. That's all. Keep going.
Oh, thank you. I mean, this was a different language, so it was even crazier, right? But I thought I pulled it off. I thought I did a great job, but guess what? I didn't book it. And then when you watch the show, you're like, well, of course I didn't book it. This person's an actual Pakistani person who speaks Urdu.
Mhm.
Like, why am I going out for this? And so I was never in a position to say, no, I'm not going to do it.
Mhm.
It's like, I felt like, oh, I need anything, like, please send me out for stuff. And what this solo show did for me was put me in a different position, right? Like it's so empowering, because now I'm like, I want to find someone who watches my show and loves my work,
Mhm.
as opposed to me trying to find someone and saying, I know I'm capable, right? And they watch bits and pieces of what you have, and they're, it's based all on that. Whereas this show, like, I have 35 characters, and where I'm from, like, what I can do. And like with the American accent, I was British educated, right? So I remember watching Fresh Prince of Bel-Air in Singapore, and Hilary Banks, the character, I would just mimic her, and then, do again prank calls, or like pick up the phone and like speak like her. And that was like, oh my God, like completely, that way. And so, yeah, I was a switcher. They call us switchers, where you can kind of switch to, I can talk to a Singaporean person who's speaking complete Singlish, and I'll be one of them, or I talk to a British person, I can kind of speak British, and then we move over to a foreigner and I'll speak, with my American accent. And yeah, it's just interesting.
That's so cool. That's so cool. And I love what you're saying about sort of getting to like set boundaries and say, like, instead of constantly being like, oh, how can I do what you want me to do? Say like, no, this is what I do. Now please hire me to do what I do. Like, that's really cool that a solo show was a bridge to that for you.
Yeah. And I don't know if you've heard of Kush Jumbo.
No.
Okay. So she was on The Good Wife, the show, The Good Wife.
I know that show. Yeah.
Okay. So I was a fan of the show, watching the show, and this new actress I've never seen before in my life shows up on screen. She was one of the lawyers, in a role that I see myself play,
Mhm.
and I was like, where did she come from? Like, I've never seen her in anything. Like, she must have had a phenomenal audition or something. Like, where did she come from? I look her up, and she's actually a British actress, right?
Mhm.
And she wrote a solo show about Josephine Baker. And so she married her life and Josephine Baker's life.
Mm.
And, of course, it debuted in the UK, did very well there. And then brought off Broadway, brought it here, like somehow was brought here. And while it was here, it gained so much buzz that the writers for The Good Wife, I forget who, Christine Baranski, that's her name, right? One of the actresses. She came to watch the show, loved it, told the Good Wife people, the screenwriters the showrunners for The Good Wife, to come see the show. Showrunners sit there, love her, love the show and her. They write her into The Good Wife.
Oh my God.
This was like the last season or something, wrote her in. And then when The Good Wife ended, there was a spinoff, and now she's one of the main characters for The Good Fight.
Oh my God.
I mean,
all because of a solo show. That's pretty cool.
That's when, so this was way before I even thought of writing a solo show. I mean, I obviously haven't watched her show about Josephine Baker, but I bought the script, right? And read through it. And I was like, man, I wish I got to see this in person, because the script was so amazing, right? so yeah, that was the little seeds right there when I was like, I could actually write something where it could become something bigger, right?
Mhm.
Wasn't in the helping someone else mode. It was more of like, I can get people to come see the show and see what I can do. And then it became more of a like, this show needs to get out there and people need to hear it. Especially now, we're actually at a great time right now where casting's a little different.
Mhm.
Like Bridgerton. I don't know if you've watched Bridgerton.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm in my second season. I haven't finished watching it because I didn't even watch that show till the second season came, and they had two new actresses in the film who
Yes,
are
they
South
did.
Indian,
Mhm.
darker skinned,
Mhm.
which you never see. And so it was just so like, wow. And right now it's such a like we're all celebrating that these two South Asians were on the darker side. And,
Mhm.
like they didn't go looking for this fair person,
Mhm.
that they got in to the show when it really should be not something that we're like, oh my God, this actually happened. Like one day, I hope we're not like, oh my God, this person got hired, even though she's so dark and no one in Bollywood would hire them for anything. So yeah, it's an interesting time. We're on that spot where three-dimensional minority characters are happening,
Mhm.
where you can have a Korean actress actually speak Korean on a show and not have subtitles for it. Like all this is happening right now. And so, I feel my show is here at this wonderful time where things are moving forward. And I think it's never going to be perfect, but conversations are happening.
Mhm.
Right. And I feel
Definitely.
even after putting out my show and I do post-show Q&As, like all these conversations about, like Crazy Rich Asians, everyone thought it was a win for Asians, right?
Mhm.
And then I showed my side of the story as a Singaporean
Mhm.
watching the show where, we were always raised as, Indians and Malays. And, the majority, which is Chinese in Singapore, has always erased us in media, right? Like we're not in English TV. Like if we are, we're the silly neighbor and the silly friend. So
Mhm.
like when I watched Crazy Rich Asians and I saw the darker skinned people in all these service roles, it's
Mhm.
like, it's the same thing. Like, and they were like, oh, porcelain skin, the Thai princess, she's like the fairest person in the world. I was like, good Lord, you couldn't find a fairer person ever. Right. And of course she's the queen. And like, it's all these things that I don't think they knowingly did. It's just so ingrained. It's what they learned growing up. It's like, don't stand out in the sun. Don't do this, and
Mhm.
then it infiltrates into a movie when they made it. And it's like, it would have been the perfect opportunity because it's based in Singapore. Like if it was based in China, it's a completely different story, of course, but the book was based in Singapore,
Mhm.
right? I mean, the perfect opportunity to show these different races, and none of that happened, right? So it's like,
Hmm. So
and yeah, go ahead.
would you turn your solo show into a movie? Like let's say
I
it was
want to.
oh, seriously?
Oh, girl. I right now it's all daydream stage, right? Like where I'm like, I want to write a pilot.
Mm.
But this is like my one chance too. So again, it's that anxiety of like, what is this gonna be?
Mhm.
Right? How is this pilot gonna show up? Like, I feel one day it will download from the universe to me. One day. But yeah, now, I've been considering trying to do like a college tour, like for women's studies departments and then see where it goes from there. Doing workshops, writing from, your own cultural perspective. Like, I mean, so many things can come out of this. But of course, the dream is to turn this into a TV series.
I think that would be awesome. I
Yeah,
think that would be really, really awesome. And then you could do what you wish that Crazy Rich Asians had done.
yes. Yes.
That would just be outstanding. So I'm gonna want to hear more about this, and I'm gonna want to have you back on here like once you've done this, even though you're gonna be like really famous and like, you know, the LA Times is calling you and, you know, whatever, and New York Times, blah,
Like,
blah, and I'm gonna be like,
phone, Queen Mab is on the other line and I have to take that call.
that's
Okay.
right. That's right. That's right. So the last question I want to ask you
Okay.
is, now that you've, you know, gone through this whole, and really for you, it's been quite a journey. It's been, you know, such a multi-year thing and so many different stages and feelings and all that. What advice would you give to someone who is like thinking, oh yeah, I think I might want to do a solo show, but I don't really know. Like, what would you say to them?
I would say do it for sure, because you never know what will come out of it. And also have something in place where you're writing every week, because it's so easy to, you know, start writing, go, oh, don't like it, move on. It's through writing everything down. And Jessica says this all the time. It's like, write it all out. And when I started writing, a thing that I told Jessica was like, I feel I'm so angry. My writing is so angry and I hate it, you know, like, because you're writing and I'm like, why do I feel this way? And why am I thinking, why can't I just accept things, right? But I was one who never accepted things, which is why I'm here right now, like, you know, always questioning things. And so as I was writing, I was so angry, especially during the Crazy Rich Asians thing, because, you know, that was the most recent thing that happened that I was so hopeful for. And then it really didn't, you know, pan out the way I thought it would pan out. And so, yeah, it was like a lot of angry writing. And so she was like, write angry, get it all on the page. And then you can kind of, you know, tweak and blah, blah, blah. And that's how the Crazy Rich Asian scene became a stream of consciousness during the show. Mm-hmm. It's me literally watching the movie, right? I'm facing the audience and talking through it, because honestly, that's how I experienced it. It was me taking my two Asian friends, right? And we're excited, right? Oh my God, it's like first time, like Asians are the front and center and like, this is it, you know, like, and then as I'm watching it, you know, they're experiencing it as an American, right? Mm-hmm. Asian American, and I'm experiencing it as a Singaporean kid who, you know, had all these questions about, wait, why is it the fairest of the fair? And why, you know, and like, how come I don't have a place there? And so I was watching it through a Singaporean lens. And that's when, you know, all these thoughts came. And then I got angry and I was like, you know, it also is in the writer's room, right? Like, who was the producer on it? So I did all my research on who the producer was. And then it all made sense. I'm like, oh yeah, it's, you know, the producer was from a Chinese speaking home. And then she was sent to China for her internship with a production company, and then somehow ended up with this production company. And she was the thought process behind the Singaporean part. You know what I mean? It's like, well, that makes sense. But again, like if there are 5 different Indians in a writing room, we're all going to have different experiences, right? And so it's never going to be perfect, but you know, you can try.
Oh no, absolutely. And I read, you know, we're talking about Bridgerton. I follow all these historical costuming accounts on Instagram because I'm a dork. And there was an Indian historical costumer and he was complaining about Bridgerton because he was saying, well, you know, it was good they had Indian characters, but they didn't like represent their culture very well. And they didn't show the wedding traditions very well. And they really should have like done a better job of that. And I was like, first I was kind of like, but then I was like, you know what? It's great that people are saying that. It's great because the next time it can be even better.
Right. And what's crazy is because, you know, I've been reading up on all this Bridgerton stuff, which is why I started watching it. Because I was like, I actually want to see what people are talking about here. Mm-hmm. The writers actually took into consideration like the backgrounds of the actual actresses. Like their experiences, you know? So there are a few things, you know, because I'm Catholic, a lot of the Hindu traditions, you know, I was never a part of because I'm Catholic, right? But them, with their cultural background, they actually put in certain things that, you know, they've experienced in their life. So I thought that was cool that, you know, as an actress, you were able to put in your input and what you thought of things. So, you know, that's again, moving
cool.
forward, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, from now on, really, all these cultural characters or whatever are going to have input from the people who are in it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought that's interesting, and we're moving in the right direction. It'll be interesting where everything stands in the next 10 years. You know, I'm here for it. Ready to be cast in any of it. Right.
That's awesome. Well, so let me ask the last two things I want to know. First of all, is your show's going to happen again soon? Can you tell people where they can see it?
Okay, so it's 3 Saturdays in May 14th, 21st, and the 28th at Art Space Black Box Theater. It's in Simi Valley, California. So that's in Ventura County. It's 30-minute drive from LA. And it's this beautiful space, a nice little black box theater, and 100 seats. And yeah, can't wait to bring it to a new audience.
Awesome. And where can people find you if they want to find you online, on social media, you know, wherever?
Okay. Well, you can go to my website, tanyathomas.com. And for Instagram, I'm at tanyathomas.com, DOTCOM. And yeah, you can find me there. Hit me up.
Awesome. Very good. Well, hey, thank you so much for hanging out with me. This was a really fun conversation.
Yeah,
and I look forward to having you back to talk about your pilot that you're going to do.
It was so nice talking to you.
Whoops, I clicked the wrong thing. I'm going to have to edit this part out.